Hello and welcome back inside the Parc Fermé for podcast number 846. This is Todd.
No, Todd, not now.
AKA Negative Camber. You know why I've asked you here.
You must convince the villagers that I'm harmless.
That's exactly what I need you to do. It is time for this week's edition of the podcast. This would be Formula One News Podcast, which of course means I have to introduce my co-host. And you know what that means. I gotta go all the way to the right coast of our nation's capital, nestled in our nation's capital. Well, technically she's outside of it, but let's not split hairs here. She's in the metro area. You know her, you love her, the lovely, the redoubtable Grace! Grace, how you doing?
I'm doing good.
Good.
I mean, DC is only like 20 miles. I mean, it's not a very big city, so
Yeah, right.
you know, so most people live like near DC because DC, like as the crow flies, it's like 20 minutes long.
There you go.
Now
So
you can't get anywhere that fast.
No,
You're not a crow.
because you're not a crow. But if you were, you'd be 20 minutes.
Yes, as I Flip used to fly drones, and then they, you know, of course, because now they can fly much higher, and so then they were like, if you live within so many miles of an airport, you can't fly drones, and it's like, well, we're within whatever, like 16 miles of Reagan National, but I can't get there that fast. You know, like
Right.
I feel like it should be driving distance, not like actual mileage that should regulate how these things work, because I surely would love to get there as if it was only 16 miles away, but I surely can't.
Yeah. So has he given up drones and resorted to
Yeah.
green laser pins and down with the pilots at the airport with the laser pins, or what's he doing now?
No, he's just given up on drones.
Oh,
and
okay.
like, you know, they're like in the like these big cases in the basement. And every now and then he just like looks at them longingly like, oh, drones, I remember you.
I remember one of the first videos you posted. It was out in the western wilds of Pennsylvania and the snow-covered hills of western Pennsylvania.
Yeah.
It's really pretty. Nice shot.
It is nice. It is nice. And so, of course, every time at the races, right, they always show the drone
Yeah,
footage,
right.
you know, pulling back, and it's just
Right.
like, oh,
Oh,
drones.
tear? No?
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
Oh, boy. We got a lot of news to cover this week.
All right.
I thought maybe
ready.
we'd cover some Formula One news. It's not a race weekend, so that's next weekend. That means Paul. And I happen to know that his flight back from Belgium
Looked pretty nice.
looked pretty nice, didn't it? He said he had a canceled flight, but then they upgraded him to business class. Nice,
Not
Paul.
too bad. Yeah.
Yeah.
I
I'll
just
tell you.
I get canceled flights and it's still
Yeah.
on Southwest and it's still terrible. Good
Yeah.
times.
Yeah, me too. Yeah, Paul, I don't know. That guy.
It's also flying international. Flying international is so much different than flying domestic.
Yeah, true. True. All right. Well, let's talk about some Formula One news. The big news has to be this. Franz
Not gonna
Tost
nothing.
at Alpha Tauri was sitting around and he got a call from you-know-who.
Goodbye, good luck, and good riddance.
Helmut Marko. That's exactly who he got. And you
Right.
know, this had to be the initial conversation when Franz says, hello? You know, Helmut had to
Oh,
go,
no.
I think you know what the problem is just as well as I do.
"Mhm.
Yep.
I think you do know what the problem is just as well as I do."
Yeah.
And so, effective immediately, jettisoned from the team is Nick de Vries, and one Daniel Ricciardo
Netflix are real buttons, aren't they?
is back in Formula One on the grid as a driver for Alpha Tauri. So in the end, apparently Nick failed to produce the kind of results he had when he drove at Williams last year at Monza, I believe. And according to Helmut, he said this, quote, "We contracted Nick because he performed great at Monza last year." He told this to Dutch newspaper De Telegraaf. "We expected him to be at least equal to his teammate Tsunoda this year, but that was not the case. Actually, he was always 3/10 slower than Yuki. We saw no improvement. We had to do something. Why wait? And what do 2 more races matter if you don't see any improvement? Nick is a very nice guy, but the speed just wasn't there. He's 28, has a lot of experience, and has also been able to gain a lot of knowledge as a test driver in multiple Formula One cars. You can't compare him to a young rookie, in my opinion, although I would argue Yuki's far from a rookie. At the end of April in Baku, he started the weekend well, and I thought he would perform better, but then he crashed again. Unfortunately, he didn't do one super lap that really amazed us, end quote.
All right. What? Like, it is, I'm just, okay. So first of all, when I saw this news, I was like, this must be an Onion article, right? Like, 'cause sometimes you see stuff on like Twitter or something. I'm like, I need to check this because I can't for sure be real. It is for sure for real. Like, they just pulled the rug out from Nick. We're like, what, 12 races in? We're not even through a full season.
I know.
I don't know. I mean, and nothing is like Formula One. I see his point. Oh, he's 28. He's not really a rookie, but he's a Formula One rookie.
Exactly. It's a different breed.
You know, I never has any driver, even of, you know, whatever your GOAT high caliber, your Michael Schumachers, your Lewis Hamilton, your Fernando Alonso, whoever you're, you know, putting in that category, never have they gone, oh, I just rode into Formula One. It was just like, I was easy. I was just winning races. Like, that's never happened, right? And I always think these things are interesting too, because what is it, like 80% the car? So
yeah,
why do we just talk about this like it's all Nick's fault?
I know. And he was 3/10 off, and I don't know. Perhaps the nail in the coffin was Ricciardo's testing times last week at Silverstone in a current Red Bull car. He was fast enough to put it on the front row, and I was curious how this will play out. In my mind, Grace,
yes,
Yuki has had ample time to really deliver in the car and has not done so, in my humble opinion. Well, Nick is brand new to the team in Formula One. I would have considered letting Dan run Yuki's car for a bit and working with Nick, but ultimately, I don't think either Nick or Yuki is the answer for the team, and I'm not 100% sure on Dan either yet, right?
I think you're right. I think that's absolutely... So first of all, they're going to keep Yuki. He brings the money. So regardless of what you or I think of him as a driver, he brings the money, right?
And contractually, they may not be able to just jettison him. Yeah.
Right, as we talked about on the previous podcast, right? Correct. It's not quite that easy, right?
Right.
It's not written in stone, but it's also not written in like, I don't know, putty either, right?
Yeah.
So it's something in between there.
Yeah.
But I don't see them getting rid of Yuki because of that. And they've invested a lot into him too to get rid of him. But I don't understand how, like, we dated you before and it didn't work out. So we're going to try dating you again and we're going to see that it's just the same the second time. Like, I don't know why that was what you went with.
I thought it was interesting. So I got to thinking about that a little bit, and I wasn't the only one. There were a couple of articles that were a little more introspective and about the prospects of Dan at Alpha Tauri. I mean, Ricciardo, Dan, at some level, I think you have to admit, at some level, he's a bit of damaged goods, right?
Right.
Now, before you get upset, I'm just saying he hasn't been delivering consistently since his days at Renault. Forget McLaren, but even before that, right? And there was an article by Jonathan Noble over at Auto Sport that raised a good question. Jonathan said that the struggle Dan had is under braking, as evidenced on a Beyond the Grid podcast. Noble said that Ricciardo is well known for responding well to a car that is strong under braking and corner entry. Give him something that performs with those characteristics, and his brilliance comes to the fore. These are Jonathan's words, not mine. As has been witnessed many times with his trademark late braking overtaking maneuvers. And I would agree with that. I think Jonathan's absolutely spot on. I mean, why I have no reason to
Who am I to argue, right?
Who
with
am I to
Jonathan
argue?
Noble.
He's fine.
Right.
As Noble pointed out, though, one of the main issues Yuki and Nick struggle with is exactly that late energy phase to corners, and it's that late entry speed and that portion of the corner into the corner, which triggers a rear instability, and this leads to a real lack of confidence for both of them. So what's interesting to me is that Dan could be jumping back into the fire or the very kind of car that he really struggled with in McLaren
Right.
and Renault, right? So I know a lot of people have high expectations. I guess I'm just suggesting this. I hope he comes and blows the doors off everybody. Don't get me wrong. I like Dan.
Right.
I just want to try to right size the expectations a little bit.
Absolutely.
You know, I wouldn't want anybody to, oh man, Dan's coming. He's just going to blow Yuki away and he's going to put it in the
No.
points. And that may not happen, but, you know, don't rush to judgment on Dan on that point.
Yeah. No, I mean, I agree. And again, as I was saying, like, the car's 80% of this. And so you either have to build a car and then find a driver who's successful in that car or change your car. There's not another way around that, right?
Yeah.
And they didn't find a driver who's going to be successful in that car, right? So
No.
they basically said, Nick, you are bad at this. So we're going to replace you with somebody that's bad at this.
Yeah. Right.
And
Right.
we're going to, and of course I mean, Ricciardo maybe contractually can't say no, but why would he say no?
No, he
What else
wouldn't.
is he going to do?
Right.
But he is long-term setting himself up for failure.
Yeah, and there's another part of me, and I'm not trying to be harsh with Dan. I think the world of Dan, but I do wonder if Dan hasn't slipped into the Botas zone and he
Right.
just doesn't know it yet. I mean, I'm hope I'm
Oh.
wrong.
That's worse than being in the Barrichello zone, right? Like this
Yeah.
is like
Yeah.
Barrichello was successful,
Yeah, he had a good
The
time when
Botas zone is not good.
and without he coming, it probably isn't long either, right?
No.
So
And I don't think Ricciardo is going to be able to ride the vibes of, back buttless shots either, like
yeah, right. Get in the creek
right,
nude and show
naked
your
butt
butt.
shots,
Yeah.
that's not going to work for him. Like
I don't
it
think
has
it's
for
going to work
Botas.
for Dan. I don't even think the shoeies are going to work,
No.
I hope I'm wrong. If I'm wrong and Dan is back to his honey badger ways, then I would say, yeah, Yuki's going to be toast. And
I think-
and this comes back to my original position, which was if Dan is back to the honey badger, I mean, keep Nick and develop him and let Dan haul the points in. But
Right.
anyway, from my perspective, it's hard to be. I know everybody said, why are you picking on Yuki? Yuki's fun and he's awesome and he's blah, blah, blah. If from my perspective, honestly, it's hard to be a team leader when you spend every moment on the radio eviscerating your entire team and screaming profanity at them when something isn't right. I'm sorry, Yuki, but I don't see that as a leader of a team.
I wonder how much that has also changed, right? Like, I think that he spent a lot of time in the Red Bull finishing school, right? I mean, that was definitely his narrative in his first year. And now that they're like, oh, so close to the back, we rarely hear Yuki on the radio. So I don't know how much that has continued as his narrative now that he's, working out and, training and trying to get more
Yeah.
into it. I mean, we
I
even
haven't
saw
listened-
that in Netflix.
Yeah, I should go over and watch the onboards and listen to his radio. I haven't listened to him.
Yeah. I mean,
a little
I
while,
think,
but-
because I think that's the thing too that's interesting is that now Drive to Survive has been out long enough that we're now seeing the arc of an entire driver's career, right? That's what we
Yeah.
saw with Ricciardo, right? In the
Right.
last season, he was like, I'm out. You better be showing me like a highlight video, right? Which they did, right? So I think that's the same thing. We're now going to have this series around long enough that you're going to see the rise and fall of somebody like Yuki and be able to say, oh, here's how he was in season 1 and here's how he is in season 8 or whatever.
Well, the funny
But-
thing is, season 6 isn't even out. We're going to see the rise and fall of Nick's career.
I know. I just think that is so short-sighted. I have no other phrase for that. It seems like
thought-
the most short-sighted thing ever.
I know. I thought HR departments and corporations were bad, but this is
Because how
brutal.
much okay, again, if you think about Formula 1 like a project like you or I work on or anybody listening to this work on, switching staff midway always is more expensive.
Mm.
Even though Ricciardo's at Red Bull, he's not at Alpha, right? Like he's got to relearn all these things. He's got to get in the car. There's going to be, you know what I mean? Like bringing on a new staff member will help you eventually, but I have to train them, right? Like, so yes, some of that gap is shortened, but it's just like if you bring on a tech, an audio visual guy that has this degree from whatever and has all this experience, that's great. That's going to shorten his learning curve or her learning curve, but it's not going to eliminate it, right?
Yeah.
So Ricciardo has all this experience, and so his learning curve will be shorter, but he's still going to have a learning curve. He's not been in that car with that team, with that, the engineer in his ear. Like, what are all these things that you're just switching up mid-season for what? I just really, when I saw it, I just thought, oh, this is somebody seeing how if I fall for it, and I'm not going to fall for it, except it's real. And I don't know. I just think this is so, again, this is how I felt, with Gasly. This is how I felt with Alex Albon. I don't understand this. It seems to me, it's like Dan Snyder running the Washington football team. I don't understand how you expect people to succeed when you pull the rug out of them every time they sneeze, right?
I know.
You're never going to get anybody to be successful. Who wants to be a part of that?
Yeah,
and the drivers are just what we see, right? I don't know what the other staff experience, right? It's
no
just
telling.
like, in a football team, what, the head coach and maybe some of the assistants are like, but I don't know what, further down the food chain is like at Red Bull.
Well, I'm sure it's more of this.
Goodbye, good luck, and good riddance.
And I just want to say, before we leave this story, who is going to do Max Verstappen's pressers now? Because literally that's the only reason they brought Ricciardo onto the team, was so that he could do all the handshakes and the baby kissing that Max doesn't want to do, and is like, I mean, like Kimi Räikkönen hated doing it, but we were all entertained by Kimi Räikkönen hating it. Max Verstappen just hates it. It's just like, he looks like a petulant child hating it.
Well, and notice it wasn't a Red Bull stable switch. Like, all right, we're going to put Dan in, we're going to move Nick over to do some sim work.
No, right.
No, I mean, Nick is gone. He's
out.
Gone.
He's going to go to Mercedes.
Yeah, I'd be calling up Toto.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know who his manager is. Maybe it's Mark Webber. Who knows? But I think, I mean, somebody knows. I just don't know.
Yeah,
but
I don't know.
I just think that if I was Max Verstappen and I saw that headline, I'd be like, you mean I have to meet with sponsors now? You mean I have to do commercials now? You mean I have to go do, sign autographs before races? Ricciardo isn't just there to do that for me. That's who might lose out the most.
Yeah, I know. One of the things that I did, so I read the press release, and then they ran some video of him coming to the, to Alpha Tauri office in Italy, and I kind of went in
with his
Franz
box in his
Toast,
plant.
And Franz Toast came out. Hey, how you doing? You came in. They kind of, milled around, and Dan, he was all smiles as you would expect. But I watched that and I thought, So I went back and looked at his videos of when he signed for Renault and when he signed for McLaren and showed up at the office the first days, because they had very similar videos.
Right.
There's a marked difference in energy level between the Alpha Tauri thing and when he went to McLaren or when he went to Renault. There's just a marked difference. And I couldn't help but notice it. Now we can say, well, he's older, wiser, he's he's less excitable and all that. It's Dan, I don't know.
And I think the thing, if anybody's going to be good at faking excitement, it'd be
Ricciardo,
Dan, right?
Yes.
Like, he's not Lance Stroll. Like, I would expect that if he needed to fake some entertainment or some humor or some
wouldn't pick
he could
Lance.
do that. No, because Lance is Lance at his most excited is still like Lance. So I just think that I agree. It is not a good sign at all. He's not enjoying this. This isn't what he wanted, but he clearly doesn't really have a choice. Maybe he just didn't think this was going to happen. I don't know. It's Red Bull, man.
I don't know.
You've already been through it once.
I know. In other big news this week, boy, we love this topic. It's the old sprint race topic, but don't call it a race. It's the sprint event, the sprint thing, the sprint. It's the running of the sprint.
The sprinty sprint.
Yes.
Sprinty McBoatface. No, sprinty McSprint face, right?
Yeah, sprinty McSprint face. That's it. So maybe it's just me. Don't send me hate mail. And maybe it's just that it needs to be tweaked more, but I'm not a big fan of the sprint race. I'm just not. And I got to be honest with you.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not a huge fan of it in MotoGP for a particular reason. Now, I know you and I both watch it, and they've been kind of barn burner races and kind of exciting, and I get all that. But Grace, I am petrified watching those riders ride around. And I think on a sprint race, you know how easy it is to get hurt in MotoGP? And I just feel like if that rider falls or has a high side and gets hurt in a sprint race, it ends his entire MotoGP season.
We've already seen that happen, right? We already have. I mean, even though Bastianini and, Jean Mir are back, it's still like
They're
they're
out of
not.
it.
Yeah, they're not peaked.
Right.
So
Now, technically, that can happen in F1 too. And
Yeah.
that becomes more of a concern because the payoff in Formula One is relatively low for the risk and expense you're taking. For me, it's a real risk reward conversation here.
Right.
Now F1 says it's going to have 6 sprint race events next year too. And F1 boss Stefano Domenicali is looking
that
at a
guy.
new concept. Are you ready for this one?
Oh boy, this is gonna be good. I can't wait.
Oh boy, it's right there with sprinklers and gold medals.
All right.
All right, quote, there will be 6 sprint races, or no, 6 sprints. And we will announce them, I think, in September because we have a meeting of the Formula One Commission scheduled for the weekend of the Belgian Grand Prix. There is a proposal that I would like, and that is a proposal, that I would like to make in line with the concept of the Grand Slam.
What? Oh my
Now,
goodness.
it is that drivers who take the 2 poles and the 2 race wins over the weekend should be recognized with something extra, which represents well the sporting enterprise they have achieved. End quote.
I'm
Yeah.
over all of this. We don't even need to. I'm like, you've gone through 3 of 10 bullet points, and I'm like, this is dumb.
I know.
You're dumb, Domenicali. I've had enough of your dumbness. This may be your dumbest thing you've come up with yet.
And I'm like, okay, so they don't anticipate it generating additional championship points, but maybe a separate trophy? Really?
Who cares about a trophy? I don't give a crap.
So
I mean, the MotoGP riders had the same complaint, right? Like, I'm not being compensated because you're not calling them a race, right? So if their contract says I will be paid for 20 races, and now they're doing 40 races, but 20 of them aren't races, but yet they seem like races to me.
Yeah, they do
right?
involve
Like,
a green and a checkered flag.
I do think they seem to have all the characteristics of a race when you look them up. But if we don't call them a race, then I don't have to compensate you for it. I don't understand. Like, who's going to care? I mean, at least fastest lap, you get a point. And sometimes it's interesting because I can take a point from Red Bull or something if you're Lewis Hamilton, right? Or like, Checo stole the point. Oh, what is Max going to do, right? Like, you can create some drama with fastest lap. But to me, this is just more like contrived crap, right? Like,
It seems like it to me.
Great, you get a trophy.
I know.
Yay.
Why don't they just take a step back here for a season and really brainstorm this thing out? I mean, why not make? I'm just going to spitball here out loud. Why not make the sprint race a race in which only the reserve drivers drive one car? So there's 10 or 11 cars only on the grid with reserve drivers only. If you have to have 22, okay, and it's got to be the main drivers, okay, that's fine. Then make the point system an accumulation of deduction points so that at the end of the year, the teams can use their points tally to deduct points from their rivals. So you could see where everybody would gang up on Red Bull right now. It's almost like a built-in success ballast, right?
I was going to say, this is totally like Gordon Ramsay's next level chef, right?
Yeah,
like,
exactly.
Do I want to use the 30 seconds as an advantage for me or take it away from my competitors? I like this.
Right. See, so I was thinking, okay, so fine, do some fun with it, because they keep having sprint races that have no impact on the race.
Right.
And it has no impact on the championship, both constructors or drivers. So then it's really while it's action, it's really kind of pointless. And if it's kind of pointless, then they're trying to come up with bits and bobbles to give a trophy or a medal or something, or this is great, we'll have wreaths or whatever. It's not compelling, right? No. Or here's an idea, just stop the sprint races until you get a really good idea and just plan and a really good plan in place. Because fans aren't that keen about being used as guinea pigs.
No.
To see, hey, we tried that Grand Slam. Did you guys like that? Did you like it? Oh, no? All right, so we're going to try something else. Okay, stop.
We're
just
going to
think it through.
You forgot where they put out the fan survey to get that feedback, which is also a part of the annoying loop. That is, we tried something and it sucked, but we're going to try to pretend like it didn't suck.
Yes.
I mean, I have never been a fan of the sprint races. I will say the one in Austria and I did enjoy that as a sprint race. So fine, you can have 2. You can have one in Brazil and you can have one in Austria.
Right.
Fine, I can live with that. But I also think the thing is that they're like, well, we're trying to get more action on the track. Well, then you need to get more race, supporting races, right?
Yeah.
I mean, like at Austin, like again, I've said this many times. I've only ever been to 3 tracks, but you have racing from 7 a.m. to 4 o'clock, right? And the Formula One race is always last, or Formula One practice is last, qualifying is last, right? That's always your title performance, right? But you have all the rich people with Corvettes, or rich people with Porsches, or rich people with Ferraris, or historic races, or GP2 races. Like it's like going to a rodeo, man. Just like we're going to watch kids, chase sheep, then we're going to watch pig races, and then we're going to go inside and watch the actual rodeo. Yes, you have to keep people entertained all day long, but making stuff up is not really going to help. I mean,
yeah, I just feel like
I don't get it.
even if you just had one reserve driver and one car from each team, and whatever points they scored went to the Constructors' Championship, stuff would get serious really quick. You know?
Oh, yeah. So they have to get 2. So they have to win both the pole and the
both
race.
poles
for both
and
sprints
both races.
and the race.
Well, what did he say? Wait a minute. Did he call the other one? He said the person. Wait for it. Commission of pros that like a grand slam. So drivers who take 2 poles and 2 race wins. Aha! You called it a race. It's a sprint win. Aha! Gotcha. See?
Yeah.
Even you, Stefano, you're calling one of the sprint a race there. So yes, if you get 2 poles, 2 races, then you get a trophy.
Okay, so now
And the crowd went crazy.
Here's what I don't understand. Just one thing of many here that I don't understand. It's Formula One. The chances of that happening are pretty high. That's not something to celebrate in Formula One, right? Like, do we need more Red Bull dominance? Do we need more Michael
already
Schumacher
celebrating
dominance?
it now by moaning and bitching that Max is winning everything.
Right, but I'm just saying, like, as we've talked, right? Racing is the opposite of any given Sunday, right? It's you're gonna have these 5-year blocks. So we're gonna have 5 years of Lewis Hamilton, and then we're gonna have 5 years of Max Verstappen, and we had 8 years of Michael Schumacher, and you know what I mean? Like, why are we celebrating
8 years of Lewis, 5 years of Schumacher.
All right, whatever. Yeah. the technical manual is only 2 pages long. I don't know why you all complain about it. Whatever. So you're right. Anyway, I think that I just don't understand why Formula One would celebrate the thing that anybody out there who's ever like, oh, you have a Formula One podcast? Doesn't that Max Verstappen guy win everything? That's all they know.
I know.
Why are you celebrating the fact that that's like the biggest criticism about the sport is that the same person wins everything?
I know.
And then if you get the pole, you're most likely to win. Why would you celebrate that?
I know. Everybody's already running around, ripping robes and gnashing teeth of the fact that Max has won, 2 championships, and oh my gosh, we're going into domination. We just can't take it anymore. And it's like, you just did this for 8 years with the Mercedes, So you're right. Why would we be handing out trophies for the very thing that apparently now gets everybody ticked off? I have no idea.
No, I guess I don't mean it's just about Max Verstappen, because at some point somebody else will take that same place.
Yeah, it could have been Vettel
right?
4 years, right? Yeah.
Right. And so I guess I'm just speaking to the fact that I think that's the biggest, I think of people, especially people in America that watch NASCAR, where they're like, well, there's 44 drivers and somebody different could win every week. And that's true. And that's not true in Formula One. So I don't know that's a selling point. That's what I don't get. Why would you... At Monaco, you have the pole, you're going to win the race. Let's not point that out to people more than they already can see that with their own eyeballs.
I know. And if they would have had 6 sprint races for each year that Mercedes and Lewis dominated, he'd have 48 trophies.
No more money, no more points, but he'd have more trophies.
48 trophies. I mean, where's a guy like Lewis going to keep all those, for crying out loud?
I just think that is the weirdest... So I take it back. Nick Fry no longer has the magic 8 ball. I'm not even sure that it's at Renault. I'm pretty sure.
Outlook, unlikely.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure it's Stefano Domenicali, and that's where he's coming up with design. Now that Ross Brawn is gone, he can't shake Ross anymore for ideas.
No, he's shaking the magic 8 ball.
Yes, to come up with what he wants. I just think this is work harder, man.
Yeah, I agree. The next story is the engine. F1 moved towards biofuels this year, and one of the challenges is the total production and the amount of biofuel needed for the series. But once they solve for production levels, F1 boss Stefano Domenicali feels the series can do something about the bloated weight of the cars by using a simplified, better sounding engine running biofuel instead of relying so much on the very heavy, physically heavy hybrid portion or electric portion of their hybrid system in the future. And I thought, well, okay, but I just wrote a story on the 2026 engine regulations, and that's
Right.
not at all what the 26 regulations are, right? And so here's what he said. I was like, aha. He said, quote, today, we are in a transition phase where large manufacturers need to develop hybrid and electric technology since they are part of their sales portfolio. But I believe if we do a good job with the sustainable fuels, we will be able to have simplified engines in a few years with a lower impact on weight. It's something we'll soon start thinking about, end quote. Now, that's interesting because I went on a whole rant at the website on an editorial piece about this. I said, why? And it had nothing to do with this quote by Stefano. It was about Christian Horner's comment about the engines and the need for an emergency meeting to really look at this whole 50-50 split, which I'll get into in just a minute. But I just want to point out that if you go read that editorial, see, I was advocating exactly what Stefano is suggesting here, that you could do with biofuels, 100% biofuels, you could do a very inexpensive engine supply of a V8, like a Gibson V8, something like that, which could cost teams around $1 million a year for fresh engines for the whole year. All right, double it, $2 million, whatever. But that is a third of the price they're paying now for hybrid engines, right? And that would add another 30, $20 million to the aero development, buying, better autoclaves or whatever they need to compete. So I was making a case for that. And you can read that over at the website. But what brought that point up and why I brought it up and why I bring up this quote by Stefano was there's been a lot of talk about the 2026 engine, and most notably Christian Horner has asked F1 to reconsider its stance on a 50-50 split between hybrid and electric power and the ICE, or the internal combustion engine. So they're going to say, hey, 50% of the car's power comes from the power unit, the hybrid power unit, and 50% comes from the ICE. Now, Total Wolff says that Horner is just not far enough along in production. He's behind production, so he's scared.
Love it.
And yeah, which is great. It's great
Totoism.
But Horner says, no, it's funny you say that because actually we're so far ahead in production that we already can see the major issues that this is going to cause, and we want to prevent it, right?
I love that too.
So that's good too. It's a good counter.
like it.
They're back
Yeah,
and
I
forth
like
at
it.
each other, Namely, he says that the electric will not be able to handle the demand, and they will need to do something special to try and generate as well as harvest electric each lap. Here's what he said, quote, we need to ensure that we're not creating a technical Frankenstein, which will require the chassis to compensate to such a degree with movable aero and reduce the drag to such a level that racing will be affected. And that there will be no toe effect, and the DRS, because effectively you're running like that at all points in time, just trying to generate the power that's needed to produce 50% of the power. He said, plus, with characteristics of these engines, that the combustion engine just doesn't become a generator to recharge a battery, meaning the engines really aren't big enough to generate that kind of energy to recharge the battery system effectively and make up the gap. So you could argue, and I'm not going to disagree with you, you could argue that he's just blowing smoke here, that Toto's right, that he's just now trying to figure out how they're going to get their system to work and regenerate. But apart from all the knife twisting and backstabbing fun, the issue still does remain. And my question is, has F1 adequately explored these particular issues, given their penchant for pragmatism in their decades-long ready, fire, aim scenario that they always engage in? it would be nice to know that before we get to 2026 and the issue crop up and say, oh, and then then we're going to sit there, sit on our thumbs for an entire season with a crappy situation that could have been, solved. But that's very Formula One, mind you. So, yeah, that's, well, you've watched it long enough to see it. You know this firsthand.
That's the essence of Formula One.
It is the essence.
I don't know what you're fighting against.
I know. It's so true.
I do also want to note that apparently from this story, Domenicali is not only a listener of a pod, but he's also the reader of our website. So
exactly, he must have read it. Who knew?
Right? Maybe he's also like a secret, donator or something. I don't know. Maybe
he could be a patron.
Swing. Right? Who knows?
Yeah, he could be wearing some Parc Fermé swag, and he may be a patron,
right? Like
he's got it underneath his shirt. Yeah. Who knows? He's a patron. That's why we love Stefano.
Yeah, right. So that's what we've learned here. He also listens. Not only is he a listener, but also a reader.
Yeah.
Good to know. Stealing all the ideas.
Yeah. So we'll have to see what happens with the engine. I'm a little concerned about what might be happening, but
and especially because this is always where they're going to talk about it, and then somebody's going to go, "Oh, the fans, they don't want to talk about engines. People are bored about engines. Their cars. I am not bored by engines. If I was bored by engines, I'd watch tennis.
Right.
I mean, I get it. Tires aren't the most exciting because there's only one tire. Right. Like back in the days of multiple tire manufacturers, we talked about tires all the time, and it was interesting. Why? Because there was something to talk about. And it wasn't just you trying to, fill some airspace about Pirelli and what they're doing, right? Like that's not interesting.
Right.
But Bridgestone versus Michelin, very fascinating. So of course I'm interested in what the engines are going to, especially something fundamental like that. Like you don't have to be an engineer to be interested in whether they're having, a V6, a V8, a hybrid, if they're going to have, biofuels, if they're going to do the 50-50 split. I think all of these things are like, we drive cars. I have an understanding of what a hybrid is, even though not on the level that, an F1 engineer would have, but you can talk about these things and we're interested because it's motorsports, I don't know, there's no need for people to shy away from this idea of talking about this.
Yeah, I agree.
And also anything that keeps Christian Horner and Toto Wolff sniping at each other, I'm here
That's
for.
always fun.
Always fun.
That's always fun.
It's always going to make a good drive to survive. Although not as much fun without Bonato there. I think that was really the three of them were like the chef's kiss, but team principals together. I love it.
They were.
Put that cookie down now.
Yes, it was good.
It's not a tumor.
Another story. My question is, do we really need to know heart rates? F1 has been testing a heart rate system. All right, so put your thinking cap on, Grace, and also put your empathy hat, your high EQ hat on here, and let's wade through this philosophically, shall we?
Okay. Sure.
F1 has been testing a heart rate system in F2 to see if it could be used in Formula One. And the plan was to show driver heart rates on a graphic on TV for fans at home.
Doesn't MotoGP already do this?
I think maybe they do.
I think they already do. But okay, I'm sorry, interrupted your story. I'm just saying once again, this has already been done, Formula One.
Yeah, MotoGP leading the way. Okay, so the issue is, though, that some of the drivers may not want that personal information shown.
All right.
So the sport is looking at ways to account for that. And the quote is, obviously, there's an element where you have to be editorially careful with how you present the data. It has to be presented in the right way and tell the story. Every driver is different and everybody is physically different. So we have to take all of that into account when we're making these decisions about how we are going to use the data going forward. But fundamentally, it's a new area for us, and it's an exciting area. That's the main thing. It's all about the entertainment, right? End quote. So I'm sitting here thinking, even if they just showed different driver heart rates with no names, or an average driver heart rate, adding them all up and dividing by 22 or 20, does that change anything for you when you're watching F1? It might be very handy for the medical staff during incidents, etc.
Right.
But for fans, would it make a difference to you if it
No.
wasn't pegged to a particular driver during a particular time of a race to see what's going on? Is this kind of a because we can do it, we should do it thing? Or what do you think?
Yes. I think that's exactly why they do it, because I think that's why they do it in MotoGP, because, oh my God, big secret, Marc Marquez doesn't get really hyped up about the crazy things he does that scare the crap out of me, right?
Yeah.
Because he's doing that job. Just like I would imagine
Right.
that if you strapped a heart rate monitor on me and had me do some like TED Talk public speaking, my heart's like, but if you
Yeah.
put that on, like, I don't know, Steve Jobs is what came to my brain in the time, right? Like, I'm
Yeah.
sure, oh, well, Grace's heart rate is so much higher than, Tim Cook's heart rate is. Yeah, that
Yeah.
seems right. Like,
Yeah.
of course, I don't know what I'm learning by watching. Oh, right. Lewis Hamilton almost got run off the road and his heart rate didn't go higher. Right. Like,
Yeah.
so I don't know why, even if it's attached to a driver, it's informative. And so I don't know why, without knowing who it is, it's less informative, because I imagine their heart rates are all pretty much in the same
Zone.
place.
Yeah.
Yeah. Right. Like, and of course I'm like, anytime they show that, I always have to ask Flip, like, what is like a normal resting heartbeat? Like, I have no idea. Right.
Well, that's
like,
just it. A lot of people
worried
wouldn't
about
know
it. Maybe
that.
I would know. I don't know. Is
Yeah.
that low?
I mean, if
don't know.
if I watched that and say, well, okay, so Charles Leclerc's heart rate is at 200, and I was like, holy cow, that sounds like a lot. Is it? I have no reference. I don't measure my heart rate, and unlike some, I don't wear an Apple Watch where it's constantly doing that. So
I mean,
so you have one.
I do, but the thing I always think is funny is that it tells you, like, when your heart rate is high, like you're
Yeah.
sitting and it's high, right before I give a speech, because
Yeah.
I'm a normal person. That's when everybody's heart rate is high.
Yeah. Right.
Like, funny,
Right.
there's some correspondence between, oh, I have butterflies in my stomach, and oh, my heart rate's high. Oh,
Right.
yeah, I can feel it. Thank you, Apple Watch. So I get it, right? If you do have cardiac events, it's very useful. But I think for people who don't have cardiac events, it's just like, no duh. I know that. I can feel it in my chest because I'm about to do something that, I have.
Yeah.
I'm amped up for.
I don't know. I guess I don't know that knowing their heart rates would do anything for me or help me enjoy the racing any better if it was on a graphic and saying, "Hey, Max's heart rate's 120 BPM." Okay, whatever. Oh, he almost hit somebody. His heart rate spiked. Yeah, okay, whatever.
Yeah.
I don't know that it does anything. I think the other things like the G loads, how much braking pressure you're putting in certain corners is interesting. Wear rates on tires. I think if you're talking about biometrics, I think that's it. I think blink rates is always kind of interesting.
Yes.
To see how much they blink and don't, and those kind of things. But I don't know.
Here's my advice, Formula One. If you're looking for something to fix, what I need you to fix is the colors of the cars on the dots on the track map so that I can tell if which red car and the blue cars from each other.
Yes.
Why don't you spend some money so I can tell if that's a Williams or that's McLaren that we're following around the track?
And if you don't do that, then put a legend over to the right so I can understand who's who.
And also on the track, everybody has to stop being red and white, because I also can't tell, like,
is that Haas? Is it Ferrari?
Right. I always make fun of Crofty because usually he's wrong. Like, whoever Crofty said, oh God, there goes Todd. No, it was Paul, right? Like, whatever Crofty said, it's usually the opposite.
Right.
But like, now I'm like, I don't know. That could be one of 8 drivers. I have no idea who's from off the track. Okay. So this is where you need to, if you want to fix something for me as somebody who watches at home, force the teams to have colors that I can differentiate when all of the dots are on the track map. Why don't you work on that? That would be really useful.
But you don't mind the changing helmets, right?
No, I love the changing helmets.
Yeah, I think that's
kind of cool what they have.
Yeah, I think that's
especially because they have the camera stock that's either yellow or not yellow, right?
Yeah, right.
And so, like, you just learn which driver, who's yellow.
Who's in yellow? Lewis
Lando
drives
has
the yellow,
right?
And so does Lando. Yeah. So.
Right. I like the changing of the helmets. It's something fun. It's something interesting. I mean,
I always think that's kind of like
it.
Their personality. You know?
Yeah, I mean, MotoGP does it all the time. I'm not like, oh, I don't know. Is that Pecco? I don't know. Like, of course it is. I have eyes.
Remember Valley's where he had his face?
Oh,
So
that
when
was
his
the
head's
best.
down, it was just Valley's face looking at it. It was great.
Yeah, so it's because Ricciardo did a helmet like that. But the
Yeah.
problem is that in Formula One, your head is this way. What makes
Right.
a great MotoGP is you're this
You're
way, right?
this
So
way,
you just
yeah.
see Valley's head.
And this face.
Right. And so that's what made it so great. And
That
that
was
somebody
so
asked him,
good.
like, why was that the picture you put on your helmet? He's like, because that's the face I'm making under the visor right now. Right. Like,
Right.
it was just such
That
a
was
great
great.
visual. So, and while we're at it, why don't you just let the drivers celebrate the way they do in MotoGP? I'm all for this. Just let their fan club, have a pig roast on the side of the track when they win.
Yeah.
Let's just do this. Like, let's
Right.
go all the way.
I agree.
Let's not worry about whether or not they have a low heart rate or not, because of course they do, because they've been doing this since they were 4.
I totally
And if they had
agree.
a high heart rate and couldn't handle this, they would have become an accountant a long time ago, like the rest of us,
Yeah, I agree.
I don't
I
know.
agree. So have you and Flip binge watched Quarterback yet on Netflix?
No, I'm
You haven't seen my boy Patrick Mahomes?
no. Or the basketball player that Martin Brundle thinks he is. One or the other.
Yeah, right. Right. You woke up the wrong MFer. You woke up. I'm here all day. That's
right.
great.
So
I'm stunned. You guys haven't watched it. I thought Flip had been on that like it was made of ham.
no, because I'm still trying to watch the American Gladiators. ESPN did a like a 30 for 30 on American Gladiators, which of course I'm like, oh, we used to play that as kids. Like, that I had no idea. So I'm like super stoked for that. But July's always busy. So all the the binge watching comes in August.
Yeah.
Oh no, that's good. Quarterback.
I had to jam in the final season of Endeavor, and it's busy time.
Yeah, I know. It's enough just to keep up with racing.
I know.
Which is why it's good that there's nothing on otherwise except for baseball, which I'm not watching.
Right. And finally.
No, it cannot be, Ricky.
All right, finally. Ferrari trying to build driver confidence.
Ferrari.
Oh,
anytime
you cannot say that. Why? It's a Ferrari.
It's a
Anytime.
shitbox.
I'm surprised that Flip doesn't just tell me to knock it off, because anytime somebody just says, oh, and then here comes Ferrari, I always go, Ferrari. Like, I don't even have a very good Italian accent at all, but I'm always disappointed that they just call him Ferrari.
Yeah. They're trying to build driver confidence. Ferrari says that building driver confidence is mission number 1 right now, as both drivers have lost confidence in the car. So what does that mean? Well,
No crap. Like, no, what?
I've lost confidence. I have no confidence in the team. No.
Are they new to Ferrari? Are these people at
I
Ferrari?
have no confidence in this car anymore. I used to have confidence, but I have none.
Are they new to Ferrari? Is this their first time watching Ferrari? Because I've only been watching the sport for 20 years. And
no, clearly they don't listen to the podcast.
And it's always a big emotion.
It's always a big emotion over there.
we always think like maybe this is the week we should put Ferrari in our fantasy team, and then we do it and I go, Todd's right. Why do I ever think this is a good idea?
I know. It's my team and I don't even pick them anymore. It's just terrible.
I think that's the thing. That's why this shocks me as a story that, like, do you not watch your own like races? Like, do you not have a debrief after it's over? Do you not listen to Twitter? Do you not like watch Drive to Survive? Like, what? How do you? And then I just want, how do I get some of that? How do I get that hubris in my own life where I can say my drivers have lost confidence at Ferrari as if it's like I have to help build them up? Why don't you, I don't know, figure out how to have a strategy that's actually going to work and like hire Bernie Collins? I don't know. Other teams seem to have figured this out by now, and yet you still haven't in at least the 20 years I've been watching.
I know. You would think. I'm sitting here trying to do a podcast. My whole family, I'm like Kevin, I'm home alone. My whole family went on vacation, and they're in Lake Michigan, and they're sending me these pictures, and they're out on the deck on Lake Michigan sunset playing cribbage. My wife and daughter there.
You need to take a picture of this and send it back to them.
Oh, wait. I will do this. We'll do this
like,
live.
This is your vacation right here.
This is my vacation. Ready? All right, this is going to be great fun. All right. Oh, wait. I love that. Ready? Okay. Sorry, folks. This makes for great podcasting.
This is great. No, not only does this is great if you're watching us on YouTube, but if you're listening in the car, you're like, it's radio. I don't know what's going on. So,
Yeah,
but yeah,
I know.
so it's beautiful footage, picture, the lovely sunset over Lake Michigan.
Literally on Lake Michigan. Yeah.
And here we are. So.
And here we are podcasting, and I'm working all week. So it's just me and the dogs. And if you hear the dogs barking, I apologize. That will be the soundtrack to this podcast. And that's not what I intended, but that's.
And we probably won't get
the
as
way
many
it's going.
emails as the time when we used, the restaurant background noise.
Yes, you're absolutely right.
Which
I
we
remember
thought
that.
was hilarious. Everybody else thought was stupid.
I think we were the only ones that thought it was funny. I think
I
everyone
enjoyed it.
else thought it was horrible and they hated it. And it was so funny because they would, just absolutely digest the BBC podcast after every race.
Yes.
But they recorded it in the cantina at Williams and it sounded like this. And so they were podcasting over this the entire thing, And so I told Grace, I said, well, I'm just going to get crowd noise with a bunch of dishes and flatware banging in the background, and we'll just do the podcast just as an homage to BBC. But boy, we got all these people so mad at us.
Why is there so much clanking in the background?
Man, this is terrible. I've taken so much heat for doing this podcast. It's amazing I still do it. So here's what Fred Vasseur said.
All right.
Said, quote, "It wasn't just a question of pure performance because something happened that affected the driver's confidence in the car."
Did you say that out loud with a
He
straight
did.
face?
He said it out loud. He said it
I
loud. Yeah.
wonder what it could be. I
Yeah.
wonder what it could be.
I wonder what it could be.
Did he have to practice that in a mirror so that he could deliver it without making a face? Especially Fred, who doesn't really have a poker face at all,
No,
right?
he doesn't. But what does it mean?
No one knows what it means, but it's provocative.
What does it all mean,
Nobody
Bantam?
knows what the hell.
Nobody knows, but that's so great. How
But-
did he practice delivering that line?
I
That's
know,
great.
but he goes on. He said, when you enter a corner and you have loss of load aerodynamic, it also causes a loss of balance. Therefore, you start to feel understeer. Add the wind from one lap to the next, which is never the same and never has the same intensity, and the difficulties add up. We don't have performance stability, so lap after lap, we lose a little performance from our drivers because they never have the same conditions and they lose confidence in the car. Now that does make sense, but he said we have to try to put the drivers more at the center of our priorities. It isn't the easiest or even the fastest way to progress because it would be much easier to add downforce everywhere, but it happens that from one weekend to the next, we have very different performances. We have good sensations in one Grand Prix, while in the next it can happen that, and we do badly. Now, it's interesting, and the reason I include this is it is interesting because you're starting to see a recurring theme in this podcast. First up, I talked about Daniel Ricciardo not being able to have confidence in the turn-in with his Renault and McLaren, and now Jonathan Noble suggesting that very much may be exactly what plagues the current Alpha Tauri, and now you have Ferrari suggesting. So let me back up. Jonathan Noble says he thinks this is also what plagues AlphaTauri, which is going to make life difficult for Dan there as well. And
Right.
it could be why he did so well in testing with the Red Bull, because it doesn't suffer from this. That's why he did a lap time fast enough to be on the front row, right? So the next thing is that the cars that have seemed to make the biggest gains this year in development are the ones who have copied Red Bull. However, Ferrari says we are not going to copy the Red Bull. We are going to solve our car's issue. And
Okay.
I would remind Fred, that's exactly what Toto Wolff said. And they
So,
have
okay.
copied Red Bull.
Yeah. So it is exactly what he said. But I think here's the thing. First of all, I think that Ricciardo and Nick DeVries should have had a shootout in a Red Bull. And that's how they decided
Good
who
point.
gets the other seat.
Good
right? Because
point.
now we're going to see Ricciardo be in that car and not do well because, oh, right, Formula One's 80% of the car and your car has problems.
Yeah.
And then we're all going to be like, what? Oh my gosh. Right. Because you could put Fernando Alonso again. You could put Lewis Hamilton, Fernando Alonso, Max Verstappen, whoever your goat is in that car, and guess what? It's GP2 engine. They're
Yeah.
not going to be able to
Yeah.
be on the front row with it. That's just
Yeah.
not how Formula One works. So unless you put Nick in the same car and then said, okay, now you go a lap and we'll see how fast you can go, you're just shooting yourself in the foot.
Right.
As for Ferrari, literally, Carlos Sainz, who seems to be a nice human being, right?
He is a nice young man.
You know what I mean? Like you were talking about Yuki's narrative earlier. Carlos Sainz's narrative has always been the opposite.
Yeah,
Even
it's this.
It cannot be,
It
Ricky.
cannot be, Ricky. He's not F-bombing him.
No, even in the olden days when he was in a terrible car, right? Like
Yeah,
he
right.
always seems to be a genuinely nice person. And we've heard Carlos Sainz since he's been at Ferrari just absolutely lose it.
Yeah, he's not
Lose
happy.
it. His car's caught on fire. He's telling, stop inventing. Like how many great
Yeah.
quotes, unfortunately great quotes have we gotten out of Charles Leclerc and Carlos Sainz? And Ferrari just told us well, we're going to put the drivers first finally.
I think
I think come on,
Carlos
man.
I think Carlos should call somebody and tell him that Fred's trying to intimidate him.
Yeah.
He's trying to intimidate me. So.
Although I will say I do love any unboxed video with Charles Leclerc and Carlos Sainz.
Oh, they're great, aren't they?
I wish that Carlos Sainz and Sebastian Vettel had been teammates because I think
That
would be the ultimate unboxed duo right there. Because I think Carlos Sainz can make anybody interesting and Sebastian Vettel can make any interesting, and that would be great. Either that or Carlos and Lance Stroll need to be teammates so that we can really see if anybody can make Lance Stroll look interesting and funny.
I agree. All right, it's time. Oh, yes. It's time for Alvin's Cats. It's where we talk about random stuff in Formula One, like Alvin's Cats. All right. Hit me with some Alvin's Cats before I get to some of Todd's no shit headlines.
Okay. So first, I have two things for you here.
All right.
First, you may remember at Silverstone, Martin Brundle did an interview with Brad Pitt, right? About the
He
movie
did.
and Team Apex, et cetera, et cetera.
Yes.
And they were talking about how he, Brad Pitt himself drove, whatever. I guess they're using GP2 cars.
F2.
Right? They're not using, F2. Sorry.
Yeah.
I'm old, whatever. F2 cars. And, I still think it's Bush. I don't know, is the second level in NASCAR. I'm old. What do I know, right?
It's still the Winston Cup to you.
It is. I don't even know who knows what their sponsorship is now. I don't. So anyway, right. So they're using the F2 cars and they make a comment that it's okay that Brad Pitt is doing this because he races motorcycles. So you could have made a MotoGP movie? What are we doing here, people? You could have made a motorcycle movie and you chose to make a Formula One movie? What is wrong with you people? It was just funny that because it's the pre-race, so it's just and here it's 7:30 in the morning or whatever. So it's just on while we're making breakfast or drinking our coffee or whatever. I mute the rest of the interview because now I have you want to see a heart rate. I am now fully you could have made a MotoGP and Flip's just woman, what's wrong with you? Calm down. Why wouldn't you make a Formula One movie? Because he often says to me, as I'm sure many of our listeners have thought as well, Grace, you seem to talk about everything but Formula One. Do you watch this sport? Why are you doing this? I do watch this sport, but it just was it boiled my blood that we could have had a MotoGP movie, which would have been great.
And this sounds
a Formula One movie.
It sounds like the plot for this movie is, I enjoyed it the first time when Sylvester Stallone did it, called Driven. It's a young hot shoe that's struggling with confidence, so they have a grizzled veteran come in, and I don't know, that's as he described it. It sounded like I looked around, I thought, good Lord, is this Driven 2? What is this?
Will it also have Gina Gershon playing the sexy ex-wife in her leather pants? I don't know.
Right.
I'm just saying,
who's gonna be Burt Reynolds?
I was just on top of the fact that I know you don't play the Formula One video game, but that is also the storyline in the Formula One game because this is a pretty tropic thing, but without Devin Butler, which is the best part of the Formula One story game. So part of the game.
This is like a hackneyed, dog-eared, storyline, and this is the best that Lewis and he could come up with.
I don't know.
Come on.
Or it could have been about motorcycles, and then it would have been
Could have been
fine, but
MotoGP, and then it
didn't.
would have been really cool.
then we didn't do that.
agree.
But you know,
All
and
right.
I'm sure Fabio Quartararo was at Silverstone, so you could have used
I'm
that
sure
as well.
you could. I'm sure Valley would have helped you make the movie.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, whatever, fine, do your
Mhm.
own thing. So the other thing I wanted to motorsports.com put out an article, which I guess I had never really thought about, why the F1 drivers' numbers are what they are, like why they pick those numbers. Because what has it been, like 10 years?
Yeah,
I mean,
right.
back in the olden days, you used to just be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5,
The,
6,
the
7,
way
8,
you finished
right,
in the
in the constructors championship,
constructors, yeah,
which I, as a watcher, found very useful, because then if you just were new, you could like be like, oh, he's 6, 7, so you knew where they kind of like, oh, they're
Were
like
last year.
Alpine, you
They're
know, right? Like,
midfield.
right, as
Yeah.
opposed to they're 1, 2, oh, they're like, you know, Ferrari or whatever, you know, like you instantly could just watch a race and know
Right.
kind of what the expectation was based on what the numbers were on the car. But
Right.
whatever, 10 years ago, they decided we're going to give you your own numbers so that you can have merch. And the only number that'll change is, you know, 1 on
Right.
whoever has the world championship. So, and they have the option to take that
They
number.
have
or
the
not.
option. Yeah.
So I thought that was interesting, because I never really thought about like, oh, they just made that change, because I was just too much of my feels over. Now I have to actually like figure out how good these teams are when I watch a race. Whatever. So anyway, I pulled 3 that I thought were interesting, even though they went through all of them. One was, so Fernando Alonso uses 14 because he became the world champion in karting when he was 14 in 1999. So I love that idea that he was just like, I've won. My number will be 14. Like,
Yeah.
that was, I like that as I didn't know why he picked 14. I thought that's pretty great.
I didn't
like,
know that story.
there you go. So he picked it because that's when he won in karting, his world championship. It's at age 14. He wrote Alexander Albon. Why does everybody write him as Alexander? I've never heard him. This is like,
There has been a rash of people in the press calling him Alexander and saying, I wonder if he's asked him to.
I don't know. Is this like Martin Brundle calling Zach Brown Zachary?
Zachary?
I don't know. Where
know.
did this come from?
I don't know.
Alexander Albon. Nobody called.
Unless he's asking the press to do it. I don't know.
I don't know.
I have
think
noticed
it's weird.
a lot more people saying Alexander.
Okay. So anyway, Alex Albon, he uses number 3, or number 23, not number 3. That's Danny Ricciardo. 23, which I did know that Ricciardo uses it because of Dale Earnhardt. So
Yes.
as opposed to Juan Pablo Montoya, which would have been a better reason to use the number 3, because
Yeah.
back in the day he was number 3 at Williams. But anyway, so Alexander Albon uses number 23, which he used in the beginning of his F1 career because LeBron James and Michael Jordan played with that, and as did David Beckham. And he's also, as well, a big Valentino Rossi fan, as is Lando Norris. So he couldn't race with 46, so he decided to go with 46 and half the number. So he came up with 23.
23. Aha.
So that's half of Valentino Rossi's number.
There you go.
So I was like, look at that. You know, who am I to not support somebody who's a big, you know, LeBron James, Michael Jordan, David Beckham, Valentino Rossi fan?
Yeah,
I mean,
right.
that's pretty much like the Mount Rushmore of like
Yeah.
great sports players or something. Like,
Right.
just if only Wayne Gretzky had also used the number 23, right?
Right.
You would have got him. And then Zhou Yu uses 24. And the reason why he does that is because that's Kobe Bryant's number. And that one I totally never, I didn't realize at all that he was 24 because of Kobe Bryant. I was like,
Oh, I didn't know that. I
I
didn't know
that
either of that. I didn't know.
So it was an informative bit of information. Bottas uses 77 because he liked 7 is his lucky number, but that was already Kimi Räikkönen, so he just doubled it.
7.
Yeah.
See, I
so-
would have probably been 33 then for basketball. I've been Larry Bird.
Yeah. Which we were watching some old basketball footage, you know, because I'm always amazed that like many guys have this ability, but like it's the things you learn in childhood about like the numbers and the stats, and that like, you know, Flip can't remember the grocery list of the 5 items that I asked him to pick up on his way home from work. And he
Right.
comes home with like 12 other random items, and none of them are the items I asked for.
Yeah, right.
That he can't retain, but he can remember all this like stuff from when he was a kid about, you know, right, the Washington football team, or, you know, whatever, and the
Yeah.
Bullets and whatever sports he watched. And then we were watching old basketball footage, And I was like, this is why. Because the only player you can tell, you're like, I think that's Larry Bird, and I think that's Kareem, and I think, but everybody else, unless you have some characteristic that makes you visually stand out, because everybody's blurry and you can't read anybody's jersey.
Yeah.
So you have to know their numbers because you can't for sure read their names on the TV
that's right.
screen.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, I'm just ruined. I'm totally spoiled by only watching basketball now because you can clearly read everything, and I don't have to like memorize their numbers and their names. But back then,
when I was young and played
idea.
football, I was a running back, so I was number 32, Franco Harris on your team.
Mm-hmm.
I was a big Franco Harris
fan.
Still am.
While we're talking about, as you should be, while we're talking about this, I also hate that they did that in football. I like that they had the numbers and that your certain position, you were certain numbers, because again, I don't have all of you memorized. I like
the
to be
80s, 87s, that's Kelsey, right?
Right.
Travis Kelsey. And the 85s, 87s, those are all tied in. Yeah.
Why did we change this? This was genius. Like if you played a certain position, you had a certain amount of numbers to pick from. This makes it easy on me because I don't know. I don't have it all memorized. But nope, now you can pick whatever number you want. And it's weird that you're not a quarterback and you have a really low number, and that's really weird.
Yeah, right. All right. I got some no shit headlines. Let's see. This is the first headline. Dominicali. Brad Pitt film will have Drive to Survive effect on F1.
What?
Is that a good thing?
of.
I don't know.
Has anything else in this show about Stefano Dominicali proven that what he says is a good idea? No, I've seen no evidence from the show.
Fat cars.
I think
the movie.
I think the highlight of Dominicali's career this season is when they were looking for him at the Red Bull launch and they couldn't find him.
I know.
That was his peak moment this season.
That was. I think he was outside listening to our podcast. Yeah,
for sure. Highlight of this season for him, because everything else he said, I'm like, that's trash. Whatever.
That's funny.
Whatever. Get out
this
here.
This is an interesting one. It comes so you got to go to Twitter and look up Maurice Hamilton. Remember,
I know him.
Writer Maurice Hamilton. All right.
Yeah, absolutely.
So Maurice Hamilton had this tweet of a picture of an article of Camilla Long's over at the Telegraph. And his quote was, she didn't like it, even allowing for Camilla Long making her living by disliking almost everything with sometimes clever cynicism. Some of what she says about self-absorbed F1 has a painful ring of truth and a counterpoint to Brad Pitt telling them how wonderful they are. And here's the headline. Lewis Hamilton is the godly Gandhi of Formula One. Golf, tennis, and football stars can't match Hamilton's unique strain of weaponized sainthood. Zing!
That's... She's good.
Yeah, I thought, whoa, that is a zing. So anyway, I read the article, and it is, it really, to be honest with you, there was more about F1 in general than it was necessarily Lewis. And there were, to Morris's point, there were a couple things that I thought, that's kind of true. That's kind of true.
Right. That's the best part, right? We're kind of like
kind of true. She was talking about it with Lewis, like, oh, he's in how terrible, it was so hard last year. He didn't know if he could make it. It's just, oh my gosh, he didn't win the championship. It's a context, man. The guy gets $40 million a year to party with Shakira, and you didn't win the championship, but you've got everyone. I mean, nearly, going to mass and lighting candles for you because of your horrible life. That's crazy. And then finally,
pretty good.
This one. Christian Horner invites F1 drivers to lavish home for barbecue, but only half turn up after he is trolled for, quote, bland food.
That is great.
So what's kind of funny is he had posted some stuff on social media, probably on the gram, and it was like a picture of him in front of his grill. It's kind of this.
Oh yeah.
fans just absolutely trolled him. I mean, ratioed him to death on
Yes.
where you're married to the Spice Girl, and there's no spices on
spice!
this.
Right. I was just like, are there raisins in your potato salad? Like, what is
Yeah.
going on here,
Yeah.
man?
People are like, dude, is that chicken? What's wrong with it? You know, it's like,
Oh my
oh
gosh.
my gosh.
He
Yeah, I
did
thought
get
that was
roasted
hilarious.
for that. I mean,
He
no pun
did.
intended. He did totally get roasted for that.
Yeah, he did.
And what driver showed up? Because I like that. I like to think like there's Gasly like trying to hang out with like Leclerc or something. Like I want to.
Yeah.
Like, what are the? Because Max Verstappen was there. So
Yeah,
like,
the Red
what-
Bull stable, but yeah,
You know,
I think in the article it said they asked Lewis if he's going. He goes, oh no. And he said, how many people went? And he said, oh, like half. You know.
Okay, Lewis
good.
Hamilton. Like when George Russell was like, "Oh, you mean we can hang out tonight?" And Lewis was like, "No,
Yeah.
I don't mean we can hang out tonight. I mean on the podium we can spray Eddie everywhere. That's what I mean. You
Yeah.
are not hanging out with me.
No.
He's not going to Christian Horner's house.
No.
He's going to go hang out with Shakira.
Yeah.
Me
Yeah.
too. That would be the choice I also would make.
Is it? Yeah.
Yeah.
He was with two other women though.
I mean,
The last couple of days, it's got the internet all a buzz.
I don't
Because
know.
everybody had him completely tied to Shakira, and then there's pictures released of him on a boat with two other women. So there you go.
He's living his life. I don't know.
He is living his life. That's exactly
Because what you're not
he's
seeing is
doing.
the boat that Shakira's on with her, two men or whatever.
Yeah,
you
she
know,
was
like,
with somebody else too. Yeah,
I don't know. I just think
I don't keep
And-
up on any of that.
I don't either, but also the buzz is good for both of them, right?
It
so the
is.
more they're seen and the more things are, out there, the more this is better
There
for
you go.
everybody.
Adds to his what you say? His weaponized sainthood.
His unique strain of weaponized
His
sainthood.
unique
Yes,
strain of weaponized sainthood. That's it.
that
yeah.
is correct. I mean,
All
I'm
right.
a Lewis Hamilton fan, but I thought, I get that's pretty good.
Yeah, it is good. All right. Well, that does it for this podcast. But a huge thank you to all of our Patreon supporters. We could not and would not do this podcast without you. So if you'd like to support the podcast, you are certainly able to. If you just go to theparcfermé.com, over on the right-hand side, you'll see where it says support us if you scroll down a little bit. And even at the bottom left-hand side, you'll see where it says support us. You click on that, it goes right to a Patreon page. You can support us there, or a PayPal. If you don't want to do it through Patreon, you can do one-time payment on PayPal or monthly or however you want to do it. But either option's there for you. We do have some merch on our website too, so you can get a t-shirt, logo t-shirt. If you feel like supporting that. Also, if you like the podcast, go over to Apple Music or your favorite podcast player and give us a good rating. Show us some love over there. We'd much appreciate that, as always. And until next week, when we come back from Monaco without the walls, the Hungarian Grand Prix with Paul Charsley in tow. He assures me he should be around for that. But until next week, when we do it all over again, this is Todd, a.k.a. Negative Cambers, saying so long, Grace.
See you in a couple weeks.
That's it, man. Game over, man. It's game over.